Hey all, it's Luke Filer here from iGen Entrepreneur, and today I'm going to be talking about repricing on Amazon. In particular, I'm going to talk about how I've used RepricerExpress to increase my sales by 75% from July to August. I think it's important to note that it's not only been an increase in sales volume, but also my ROI has increased, and therefore my profit has increased by quite a lot. I've actually made over £3,000 in the last 30 days from selling on Amazon. So why use repricing software? Well, I'm going to talk a little bit about my story. So it's actually been a year to this day since I made my first sale on Amazon, and back then I only had a few items live to manage. I actually started using Amazon's own repricer pretty much straight away, and I used this up until about 2 months ago. I now have over 250 live products, and it's just not possible to manage all of these products. If we look down here, you can see that in the last hour alone, there's been 348 price changes. Obviously, selling on Amazon is really important to win that buy box, and every time you might change that price, even if you use Amazon's own price, it's just not going to be effective. So, in essence, in summary, I was just leaving money on the table, and that's kind of been shown by that increase in revenue and profit. I'm not going to go into detail over why to use over Amazon's own repricer, because there's actually a blog posted by RepricerExpress, which I'll link in the description, which actually covers this quite well. But I have noticed a significant increase in sales. I think two key points to mention are that Amazon only reprices downwards, whereas RepricerExpress prices upwards, and you can really customize your repricing with RepricerExpress. So, say for example, you have an FBA seller that's priced at £20, and you're matching them, and then they sell out. Amazon will just sit at that price. Whereas RepricerExpress, you can reprice up to the next FBA seller and share the buy box with them there. And well, with RepricerExpress, as we'll look at, there's so much you can do to customize exactly what you want to do. And compared to some other repricers, I think this is really good. So I'm not claiming that anything I talk about in these videos are the best methods. It's just sort of my personal experience of what I'm doing. I just want to say now that I'm not going to go into huge amounts of technical sort of detailed information here, and this is for a couple of reasons. Firstly, because I'm actually going to be hosting a webinar with someone from RepricerExpress next week. You can see the details in the description, and if this video you're watching at a later date, then you can check out that video replay on my channel. Secondly, I think that RepricerExpress really goes into a lot of detail, and you can look at the features page and go into more detail with them. And also, there's a lot in the blog and the support in terms of videos and detailed sort of instructions on how to really dive into all of the features, and that's what I used when I was getting set up. So I will outline a few things, but that's why I'm not going to go into too much detail. I'm more going to focus on my experience. Excuse me, got a bit of a cough. So here we are on the dashboard, and this is the page you see when you log in. Once you've created your repricing rules, which I'll go over, the first thing you need to do, well, so the only thing you need to do is set min and maxes for products. You can do that, and I do this using this third setting here, and actually get a VA to do this as one of their tasks. I've outlined the process for them to follow, and they do this on a daily basis. Just bear with me while I log in. And the way I set the minimum is my base minimum is set at 15% ROI, and my max is a fixed multiple of the current buy box price, roughly. You can see why the maximum is important when we go into the repricing rules, and the minimum is important for obvious reasons. I just want to say that this is a base min and a base max, as opposed to the calculated min and the calculated max. In short, this means that the base min is kind of like a global price, and in your repricing rules you can alter this to a calculated min. So what I would do is open it up, look at my cost price, work out what 15% ROI is, or I get the VA to do this, and then I'd enter the base min, the base max, and click update. What you can also do is, if you want, based on, so when I'm making purchasing decisions or my reviewing VA is, we'll make notes, so we might want to use a different strategy, and we can change that here. And you can also see a lot more detail, which is really useful with, in terms of like history, for example. You can see what pricing history is, and you can use that to understand why something's happening. If you want to do a fixed price, this is what I do for some items. So for example, if an item has been selling at a lower price in the past, so it's currently quite high, and maybe all the FBA sellers are sold out, it's an item that's not really sold much anymore, so it's slow sales, and you want to try and have a go at that item because the profit margin is really high. You can set a fixed price, and I'll often do this. So say in the past it's sold at £40–50, Amazon have been on it, but they haven't been selling it for months. Now there's just a few really high priced MF sellers and it's barely selling. I might buy a couple, and I might turn repricing off, enter in a fixed price of say £70, and then click update, and because you turn repricing off, it'll just sit at that price. And then I actually add it to a sheet of ASINs which I monitor. And this, again, these are just my sort of personal methods that I use. So back on the dashboard, there's two other main elements here. You can look at your sales figures, which has some useful information. I mainly use Sellerboard for this sort of analysis. This is useful, I have checked it out. And you can look at the buy box, so you can see how often you're winning the buy box on different products, and if, for example, you have low stock on any products, that's also useful there. Again, I kind of use Sellerboard for that. So I'm now going to go into a bit about the repricing rules I use. My inventory is useful. You can look at sort of more in products and change things there. I'm not going to go again into too much detail. I'm more going to go into sort of rules I use and sort of my customization. So I actually have sort of 3 core rules for each marketplace. And there's a base rule, and then a rule that will, an item will automatically switch to. So you can see here there's automations, and an automation allows you to move between rules based on certain criteria. So if a criteria is hit, it will trigger the automation, and you'll move, the products will move from one rule to another. So you can see here, there's some listings for pricing each of these rules. Not all of them, because I don't necessarily use all of them, or maybe some of them just aren't being triggered. So you can see there's a default rule, which all the items, see when we're setting the min max there, that's what it defaults to, and you can change this. I'm just going to go through some of my default rule and explain it. So when I said that I set my minimum to 15% ROI, a lot of people think that's quite low. I don't want it to sell for that, and actually that's my base minimum. Remember I talked about a calculated minimum. So for this rule, I actually add 2.5% to the base minimum to try and get a bit of a high ROI to start with. And in fact, I'll actually switch to another rule, which I'll show you in the automations, if there's no sales within 2 weeks. But I'm just going to talk you through this rule, because I think it'll give you an idea of how I kind of go about the thought process between my rule anyway. So I've talked about the minimum price and the maximum price. You can just alter it for different rules if you need to. So if you're going sort of a more aggressive strategy, you might want to lower your minimum there. Or if you're going more conservative, you might want to increase it from the base min. So I talked about that base min and calculated min. Then you have your competition and how you compete with them. Most of my rules I will just match. Amazon, FBA, and Seller Fulfilled Prime. If I'm more aggressive, then I might try and price below, but in general I match. And MF, I tend to price above by 10%, because in general that will get me the buy box. I do tend to check these though, make a note, and if I'm not winning the buy box against MF, I'll try and go for a different strategy where we don't price as high above, because you don't just want to be sitting there, not getting the buy box, and then probably not getting any sales. But you can also deal with this with automations. So that's where you might have a rule where if you don't make a sale for 2 weeks, which I do, then you switch to another rule where you actually go to MF and price above by, say, 5% or even match. So obviously I reprice with new because I need to sell new items. And you can also exclude certain sellers from your pricing. So I exclude sellers if they've got less than 70% reviews, because in general those sellers aren't going to be getting the buy box. And this kind of just I try to exclude those sellers that are sort of from different marketplaces, like the US marketplace. This is just something I'm playing around with and I might change. The aim of this is just try and avoid competing with sellers who aren't going to be getting the buy box. I don't really want to be pricing too lower than I need to. So you can have different scenarios. So if there's no competition, so no competitive sellers, then it's just going to sit at the maximum price. And that's why your max is important. If competition is below my minimum, I'm just going to compete with the next best seller. So if someone's selling at £19.50 and my minimum is 20, I'm just going to compete with the next best seller. So perhaps it's an FBA seller at 20.5 and I'll just match them. If I'm not buy box when I don't reprice, again, a lot of these you just play around with, see what works for you. This one I think is quite useful, profit section, and this is something big difference between Amazon Ultimate. So I use this and I enable it, and what it does in short is that it will set my prices to max between 2 AM and 4 AM when I'm probably not going to be getting any sales, and this will in effect try and get me to sell at a higher price. So say I'm selling something at £20, me and another FBA seller are just sitting there, I might go to my max of say £50 overnight, and if the other seller, for example, does that as well, we might end up selling the next day at around £30. That's just an example, and you don't have to use this. This is just something I'm trying to use because it's just to increase the average ROI I'm getting on items. So I'm just going to quickly, that's kind of that rule summarized. I'm actually going to go into automations, and in there I'm going to talk about a bit more about other rules I use, and it's the same for each marketplace. I've got 3 sort of key rules, as you can see. I'm looking at developing these, and I'm going to talk about the automations I use to switch between them. So this is the first rule here, and I'll use this as an example, but I'll go over all 3 quickly. So if an item doesn't make any sales within 14 days, then it will switch from a rule which is almost exactly the same, but the minimum price just goes from that multiplied by 2.5% back to the base min, which will be a 15% ROI, and also the MF percentage is a bit lower. If there's no sales again if there's no sales in 30 days, it'll then switch to a more aggressive strategy where it will try to win the buy box. It'll have a lower minimum price, and it will undercut FBA sellers and Amazon sellers. And this isn't popular with some people, but the rule won't actually, if it does make a sale, it will then go back to this rule. So it's just to try and sort of get sales on slow moving items, and you can see this is rare because these are recently automated, so it's not like I'm trying to race to the bottom of every single item. This is only for items that aren't performing well, and this is something I'm updating all the time, and I'll be interested to see what other people are using in the upcoming webinar. And also have a rule where if there's a price war, you can actually customize these settings. I'm not going to go into that in detail because it's covered pretty well, but you can sort of outline what is price war. So if you're changing the price all the time, so if someone's undercutting you, for example, it will change to a setting where it actually prices 1.5% above the cheapest FBA seller, and the idea there is to avoid a race to the bottom while still getting a bit of a share of the buy box. So that's quite a clever one, I think, and it can sort of say someone's sitting at £20 minimum. Currently the buy box is £30. They join the listing, and as I said, their minimum is £20, and they're just going to undercut you, penny underprice you. That'll trigger this price war, and you'll then sit at 1.5% above them, which means that they won't penny down to that £20, and you might instead sit at £29.50. You're not going to get all the share of the buy box, you might get less sales, but you're not going to be selling at £20, you're going to be selling at £29.50. So that's the idea behind this rule. So I'm going to go into this rule now and talk through kind of roughly how it works. Again, I'm not going to go into too much detail because it's the technical side's covered. I'm just going to go again with my sort of thinking to give you some ideas maybe on how you can use these automations. So this is a really basic one. If my order's 0 in the last 14 days, then it will move to this other repricing rule. This is the key bit here. I think it's a really useful one. Basically, if you sell out the product, you're not going to make any sales. So, say you sell out and then you replenish it. This just means that if the restock date, so if you replenish it, it has to be at least 14 days ago. So it's to avoid triggering the rule for items that you've just replenished. I hope that makes sense. So then I use this lock period here, so I'll stay on this for at least a couple of weeks, and then if I'm making those sales, so when the trigger no longer apply, I'll leave. So the idea is, actually I might need to change this, but the idea is to then go back to the previous repricing rule. I actually need to have a look at this. So, yep, this is what I have the different rules, and that's kind of how I use this. And I think these automations are really cool for switching between rules and just trying to avoid how much time you're spending repricing. I've gone from spending sort of over an hour every 2 days to now I spend very little. It's more just monitoring how these repricing rules are working and tweaking these when I need to. So one thing I also want to mention about RepricerExpress, I think the support is awesome. So the live chat here during business hours are very, very responsive, and they're happy to help you sort of get what you want out of your rules and your automations. And so I think that's a really, really big plus about RepricerExpress there. So I'm conscious this has gone on for quite a bit. I do like to try and keep my videos to the point, but I think there's a lot to talk about here, and hopefully some of these things mentioned will help. If you do want more information, then either check out the webinar, if you want to sign up, the details will be in the description, or if it's already passed, then you can just check it out in the replays on YouTube, in my YouTube channel, should I say. So I do have an offer for you. You can get a 15-day free trial, but I managed to sort out a 30-day free trial. So if you use the link to RepricerExpress in the description, you'll get 30 days for free instead of the usual 15. And hopefully that'll give you long enough to see that RepricerExpress really does help, and hopefully it can help you boost your sales and your ROI, and I really do recommend giving it a go. And if you do need any help, feel free to drop me a message or leave a comment. It's been great doing this video, and I'll see you next time. Cheers.